Have you ever talked to someone about things that concern you only to realize that those same things were later used against you? Talking about topics that you should keep to yourself could make certain situations more unpleasant and your life harder. Follow this video because, thanks to a Zen story, you will learn what the 7 things are not to say to anyone to live peacefully. So, make yourself comfortable and stay with us until the end. But before continuing, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share the video. Takeshi was a young man who lived in a Japanese village nestled in the hills. Today, you will listen to his story and how you can draw valuable lessons from it for your personal growth. One day, the boy went to the village market. Here, he learned of the presence of an elderly sage called Hiroshi, who lived in a monastery hidden in the mountains. Hiroshi's wisdom was known by all the inhabitants of the region to the point that Takeshi decided that the time had come for him to go to the old man in search of advice to improve his spiritual growth. He packed a small backpack with some supplies inside and set off towards the monastery. He was full of expectations and knew that the words of that sage could make him see life from a different point of view. He walked for hours, passed rivers and forests, and finally reached the hidden monastery. He immediately felt a sense of peace looking at those enchanting gardens and those ancient buildings surrounded by greenery. The first person he met was Hiroshi, who welcomed him with shining eyes and a smile on his lips. The monk invited him to have tea with him. After breaking the ice, the young man told the master the reason for his visit. "Master, lately I have the feeling that people around me tend to disrespect me, distance themselves, or interfere with or belittle my plans and projects. This pains me and makes me inadequate." The young man continued, "I think I behave kindly to everyone. I try not to disrespect anyone, and yet I can't understand why this happens, and I would like to avoid it happening again." Hiroshi looked at Takeshi and nodded. He understood the situation perfectly and decided to make his knowledge available to help the boy regain his emotional balance, and thus began with his teachings. To reach inner peace and best experience your spiritual path, it is necessary to learn to use and balance both the heart and our language well. My young friend, it is important for you to know that there are 7 things that we absolutely must not talk about because they can negatively influence our personal growth. Let's start with the first. This is about other people's secrets. Hiroshi, in this regard, wanted to give an example. Imagine a friend of yours who decides to tell you one of his most intimate secrets because he has the utmost trust in you. If you decided to reveal that secret to someone else, you would undermine that very trust because at the basis of human relationships, there are characteristics such as honesty and confidentiality. The young man began to reflect on the example and understood. He had not always managed to keep those secrets that had been entrusted to him, and he realized how precious it was to do so. The second thing not to tell anyone to live peacefully are our personal goals and our dreams, said the master. Telling them is equivalent to planting a seed and watering it continuously to make it grow faster. If you give too much water, however, it rots and dies. Dreams and goals, just like a seed, must be nourished in the silence of our spirituality and fertilized with motivation, discipline, and consistency. When these dreams are ready, we can share them. Master Hiroshi also made his teaching more precious in this case with an example. Bamboo grows tall and strong because it does so slowly. Takeshi began to reflect on this example and how often he found himself sharing his plans, and for this, receiving criticism from friends and family. Master Hiroshi continued with his lesson by explaining the third thing not to talk about in order to live peacefully: wealth and material possessions. The reason is very simple and concerns the envy and desire for revenge in others. Imagine you have a very precious stone. Would you show it to others? I don't think so. It would be like making it completely lose its value. True wealth is not economic wealth and cannot be counted in land. True wealth is spiritual wealth, the one that leads us to inner growth and mental well-being. There is absolutely nothing wrong with also possessing material riches, but these often attract the envy of others. Even in this case, Takeshi began to think about all those times in which he had tried to conquer others by showing off his riches. He didn't realize that all this wouldn't lead to his or anyone else's happiness. Hiroshi now moved on to the fourth point, which concerned personal problems, and continued with his teaching by telling the young man, "Imagine that you have just dressed a wound. Talking about it with others would be like continually tearing off the band-aid. Talking about it with anyone doesn't lead to the fastest healing. In fact, some people may judge you or not understand you, widening the cut even further." Also, in this case, Hiroshi wanted to give an example to make Takeshi better understand what he was talking about, so he told him the story of another boy who had confided his problems to the wrong people. He then suffered judgment and ridicule from those he trusted. It was here that Takeshi realized the importance of selecting people with whom to share personal problems. Only we can know our pain and what it hides. At this point, the wise Hiroshi began to talk about criticism of others and the judgment that is often given gratuitously. Imagine you are in a garden with a lawn full of flowers. Even though these may seem similar at first glance, they are all different. Criticizing and judging others is like wanting to change the color of flowers. You too, young Takeshi, must first accept the practice of empathy and compassion before expecting others to do the same with you. This is a fundamental concept in your spiritual search journey. Master Hiroshi, taking the boy particularly to heart and with the desire to guide him on his path of spiritual growth, wanted to share another anecdote to make him think further. This was about a dear friend of his who had judged a stranger blinded by his prejudices very harshly, only to later discover that it had been a simple mistake. This mistake, however, left him with an important lesson. We shouldn't talk about others if we don't know more facets of their history and their personal path. The young Takeshi continued to reflect on the story of the monk's friend and how he had often, just like him, tried to judge others superficially and decided that he would no longer do so. Master Hiroshi continued talking about the sixth thing. Another thing that you don't have to tell anyone to live peacefully are the negative experiences that have dotted your past, even if you have overcome them. Talking about pain and suffering can bring back those same feelings, lowering your energy level. Some people could then use this information to hurt you and discourage you. Accept that you can't confide in everyone, even if you feel the need to at the time. You have to be sure before venting about the people in front of you, what their values are, and your trust in them. Also, in this case, the master wanted to give an example and told about a human who constantly needed to talk to everyone about a past failure and how this attitude took all opportunities away from him. Once again, Takeshi stopped to reflect to look for this attitude in his daily life, and it occurred to him how often he had mulled over the negative events he faced. He realized that people did not understand him and did not respond to his pain as he would like, but rather, they judged him. This had profoundly damaged him and distanced him from new experiences. Before closing his teaching, the monk also explained the seventh thing not to talk about to preserve the path in spiritual growth and live a peaceful life. The seventh thing is deeds of kindness and generosities, said the monk. The boy immediately didn't understand because it seemed like a simple argument that couldn't be used in any way against those who committed it. You don't have to do acts of generosity or help someone just to get recognition or compliments in return, because true generosity must come from the heart with altruism. Takeshi also thought about these words and realized that often throughout his life, he had made these gestures only for the purpose of being recognized and for his reputation, forgetting their true reason and value. The conversation between Hiroshi and the young man lasted a long time, but at the end, Takeshi had well understood the teaching and how to bring them into his life to live more peacefully. From that day on, the young man, in fact, meditated and committed himself to putting the precious lesson into practice, and immediately he noticed that his interactions with others were different and that he no longer felt discredited or underestimated. His spiritual growth also emerged thanks to the power of silence and confidentiality that he had begun to practice.